In this video, I'd like to talk about checkpoint 5, which is solving equations. We've solved lots of equations before. What's interesting about these equations is the fact that we have the unknown on both sides of the equal sign. Let's start by looking at B. Equation B, notice we have an x term on the left and an x term on the right of the equal sign. Let me take a second and rewrite that equation down here. Also, notice that on the left, we have some like terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the commutative property, which says I can rearrange addition and subtraction without changing the answer, to write them next to each other to make it more obvious that it's 1 plus 5, so it's just 6. This just makes the equation a little bit simpler because we're going to have less things to worry about moving from left to right. Now, it doesn't really matter which side I choose to put the variables on. More often than not, students tend to want to put the variables on the left side of the equation, but in this particular case, I'm going to put the variables on the right side of the equation, and the reason is because it's going to keep the variable term positive. So, to undo subtracting 2x, I'm going to add 2x to both sides, which gives me x all by itself on the left, and 6x minus 3 on the right. Now I got to move that minus 3 away from the x term, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides to get 9 is equal to 6x. Dividing both sides by 6, by 6, we get 9/6 is equal to x, which of course is the same thing as 3/2, which you could choose to write as 1.5 or 1.5 if you like. Doesn't really matter. Any of those 4 ways of writing the answer is just fine. Now, let's take a look at another one of these problems. This time, let's look at C. C, like the example we just did, has x on both sides and has some like terms we're going to have to deal with, but it also has this set of parentheses. So there's nothing to be done on the left side, so we just copy that down for a moment. We know from our work with equation mats earlier this year that subtracting a negative is the same thing as adding its opposite. So I can get rid of those. Think of flipping tiles from the bottom part of the mat to the top. Now I've got some like terms on the right. So again, using the commutative property, I'll put the things that don't have x next to each other. Makes it a little easier to see. So 2 plus 1 is 3. Negative 4x, take away 1 more x, negative 5x. This time, I'm going to put the x on the left side of the equation, over here, because that's going to give me the positive variable term. Again, doesn't matter. Put the variables on the left, put the variables on the right. It's up to you. So I'll add 5x to both sides. Negative 2 plus 5 is positive 3. Now we have an equation that looks much easier to deal with. Add 6 to both sides, gives us 3x equals 9. Finally, divide both sides by 3. 9 divided by 3 is just 3. Feel free to slow down, feel free to pause, back up, much as you need to. Next video, we'll look over some of the checkpoint materials problems.